Hello there. I'm trying something a little bit different today, so bear with me. I have a whole fancy new camera setup that I'm working with, so hopefully this all goes well. So I just finished watching episode 16 of the CW series, and holy cow, that one was just a roller coaster of emotions the entire way through. So I'm going to zip right through this one real fast. So first of all, they opened up Nancy Drews trying to find everything that she needs for Carson's evidentiary hearing, and she's completely exasperated about digging through all of this and finding nothing new. She's not getting any help from Lucy, so she just kind of throws herself back in the chair and calls out, "Where's your help? Where's the super secret clues that you've been leaving for me?" And it gives it a minute where it doesn't seem like anything's going to happen, because why would it? And then when all of the papers and evidence that she's been combing through just explode, and you have this like creepy ghost pointing to the pantry, it felt like kind of an F you Nancy Drew moment there from an exasperated ghost. So that was kind of a funny way to open things up. Then they really took us through the entire breadth of characters, so that we have suspected absolutely everybody in this show as the person who killed Lucy. They bring in Nancy's mom in this episode, so we're considering that she may have been the killer, but really we don't have anything to establish her as a character other than what Nancy has said. So that could have been an interesting take on an unreliable narrator from Nancy's point of view there. But then going along with that, we've started to suspect Karen for like a hot second, the detective who was Lucy's best friend, because we find out that she was the last person to see Lucy alive, or so we think. Then I really liked the clue that Nancy picked up on, where there was the single space in the first emails that Ryan had sent to Lucy, but the very last one had a double space after the period. I like the subtlety of that, especially considering that's kind of a generational thing. So it did indicate somebody older, and they didn't even really bring up that fact. But it's kind of interesting that recently Microsoft just came out with the announcement that the proper way to do things is to single space after the period. So that was interestingly prescient. Then once Nancy addressed Ryan, once she found him at the police station, he was kind of exasperated. "I've just given another testimony. I don't want to do this again." And she's very upfront with him. She tells him what she's got. And when he's explaining what really happened with Lucy to her, I thought that was an interesting take on him as a whole character. We're seeing him as very strong, having to stand on his own, keep this secret away from other people. But then at the same time, he is showing a lot of cowardice. He doesn't necessarily want to interact with his family. He feels a lot of pressure. He just wants to lay low. And I think those are two really interesting takes on a multifaceted person. Then, once they go to Lucy's house, I was noticing that Nancy had no breaking and entering beanie on this time. So are we done with that? I don't know. Or it could just be once she's breaking into an abandoned building that she doesn't wear it, except she's worn it in 2 other abandoned buildings that she went into. But I was too busy focusing on her breaking and entering beanie, and all of a sudden Lucy shows up in the window and the window explodes, and I crawled up into my seat like I was really there. So that was kind of a fun little surprise. Then they go into this abandoned building, and Nancy just starts willy-nilly pulling wallpaper off and jamming her arm into the hole of an abandoned wall there. She is far braver with that sort of thing than I would be. She did this earlier when they had to reach into the old tree when they triangulated the graves. But then they find Lucy's diary. I thought it was kind of funny that this was supposed to be like an 18-year-old girl's diary, but it had sparkles and rainbows and unicorns on it, because I think that I probably would have still had sparkles and rainbows and unicorns on a diary that I had when I was 18. So that was kind of fun. Then, before that, when they went into the house and there was the drawer that had been overturned that was like shaking violently on the ground, and Nancy's getting really close to that, then all of a sudden it stops and Lucy shows up and like engulfs them in this like ghostly dress material. They never turned that drawer over. To me, that seems like the first thing you do if you're brave enough to go in against a ghost is if something's shaking and then stops when you look at it, don't you at least look, right? Maybe that's just me. The whole plot line with the bones I thought was a little contrived. It made it seem like they had brought these bones in, but then didn't necessarily have anything to do with them. And so they had to make a whole heist situation where they had to hide the bones and the police are here and what do we do with them? So I guess they sort of made it work. And then at the end, they had the situation where Bess went to find one of the bones that she had put on the dishes under a rag. And I think at the end, I couldn't quite tell because it was a very like small profile of his face. And was it the police detective that they showed watching the claw where it seemed like he had an evidence bag with one of the bones in it? So I'm assuming they found that one and now they're playing it off like they didn't find anything to keep them on their or off their guard. So we'll see how that comes into play in the next couple of episodes, I'm sure. But I really liked that they brought in the expert who had been analyzing the DNA and Nancy sent the clues to with the crown and the hair sample and everything. And he ended up hiding the bones in the freezer with Ace. And when the police came in, they had just a cute little moment where they're like, oh, we're the bus boys. He's like, I'm the senior bus boy. I thought that was a cute way to endear us to this character that we've only seen very small snippets of. One other thing that stood out to me for just a second, though as it went on, I think I kind of answered my own question. When Nancy was testifying, it seemed like all of the information she was sharing hopefully came from Lucy's diary, because it was information that she had gathered from a whole bunch of different places, but the diary was really the only evidence that she was presenting. So unless that information was all in the diary, I'm assuming that would all be hearsay and wouldn't be admissible in court. But I'm guessing based on the way everything fell together that it did all come from the diary. I do wish they'd been a little bit clearer about that, but I get the fact that it did set her up as a storyteller in this situation so that they could do the flashback between Lucy and Ryan to show how everything had gone down. Then I started to question, after Nancy got Carson off in the evidentiary hearing, they go home and he's like, oh, I made your favorite dinner. And what happens next? Hold on to that. But can you imagine that power dynamic in this household? So your 18-year-old daughter just got you off for murder and suddenly you guys have to go back and live together like nothing happened or have your happy life. If it was anybody except Nancy, that could go completely differently. Like, well, you know, I could do this, except there was that time that I made sure you didn't go to prison for the rest of your life. Like, that dynamic could be insane afterwards. But what happened next, I feel like, was even more insane, and my head is still spinning from the fact that Lucy is Nancy's mom. I did not see that coming. I did not even expect it until they actually showed it then and there on the rocks with both of Nancy's parents. Then the other thing that they didn't even mention in this episode is that makes Ryan Nancy's dad, which seems even more mind-blowing to me. But I did go on to IMDb and look up their ages just out of curiosity because I am a terrible judge of how old people are, and Ryan looks really young to me. It could be just how he acts, but he's 42. That actor in real life is 42, and the actress who plays Nancy is 24. So the numbers actually work out exactly right in real life, where he would have been 18 when she was born, just the way it played out in the show. So I thought that was kind of funny because you always hear these stories about, you know, people in their 20s playing 14, 15, 16-year-olds in high school. So I thought it was interesting that they actually kept these ages somewhat realistic here. And that's that. This was, again, I think it's like the 4th episode in a row where I'm like, oh no, it just speaks for itself. We're just going to blow right through this because there's so much that happened. And I feel like that's got to be an indicator that this show is good. I've done a total 180. I'm sold. I only have 2 episodes left and I'm probably just going to blow through them today because I am on the edge of my seat for every single one of these. I'm overlooking the fact that we've gone through every single person on the show and have been convinced that they're guilty of something or probably murder at some point in this show. But really, I think they're using it well, and I gotta go watch the next one. So probably in like another hour, I'll make another one of these. So until an hour from now, toodaloo, Nancy Drew.